Hook. They tell you never to call room service after midnight if the menu has items that aren't food. They tell you to ignore the bell if it rings from the corridor with no footsteps coming. They tell you if the elevator stops on a floor without numbers, don't step out. I read all of that on message boards with usernames that get deleted after one post, in threads that vanish and show up again in web archives, like ghosts pulling blankets over their heads. I screenshot them anyway and told myself I didn't believe any of it. But the bell in my pocket, an old brass concierge bell the size of a plum, found in a thrift store, wouldn't stop ringing the moment I crossed the lobby of the Marigold House. It rang against my thigh like a heartbeat that wasn't mine. And the night manager, who had the polite, wipe-clean smile of a person who has never had to leave a room in a hurry, looked at the bulge in my coat as if he'd felt the bell's pulse through the carpet. "Welcome back," he said. "I've never been here," I said. He glanced at the revolving door, which reflected the street and the snow, and briefly the outline of a person who looked like me, but stood a fraction to the left. "Of course," he said. "First time is always best." He slid a guest card across the counter. The front said House Rules in a successively smaller font, like the last line of an optometrist chart. The back was blank, except for a room number written in pencil, 609. "Check-in is easy," he said. "Check-out is careful." My bell rang once, noticeably louder, and then went still. I should have left. I didn't part I arrival, or how a rule book smelled like rain. I came for a story. That's what I do. Collect voices that belong to places, edit them into an episode, and try to make rent off the ads for mattresses and meal kits. I've climbed staircases that were steeper than the plots, visited diners where the regulars told me the ketchup bottle screamed after closing, and slept in a lighthouse where the sea keeps two different times, one for boats and one for the dead. The Marigold House was a dare I gave myself on a gray day when my inbox felt like a closed fist. An old ski town hotel no longer on booking sites, sitting just off the highway in a pocket of trees that the snow couldn't quite claim. A place that still had a switchboard mounted on the wall for show, and a mirror behind the bar that made the bottles look like an orchestra tuning up. Outside, the February storm stacked snow on the streetlight like a forgotten cake. Inside, the lobby layered eras, chevron parquet, a chandelier with too many bulbs missing, a fern that couldn't decide if it was plastic or simply tired of breathing. "House rules?" I asked, trying to keep it light. I flipped the card. 1. Do not answer if a phone rings from the corridor. 2. Do not accept items through doorways. 3. Do not look into mirrors after 3:03 a.m. 4. Call the desk instead of the police. 5. Return all keys. Cute, I said. You sell t-shirts with these. We sell nothing, the night manager said, which wasn't a correction so much as a diagnosis. He read my name on my card without looking. Iren Tran, room 609. Elevator is to your left. Ice is nowhere. If you need anything, don't ask the service phone unless the dial is already turned to you. Okay, I said, which is a word that can mean I heard you or I have decided to be stupid. Do you have Wi-Fi? We have weather, he said, and slid a brass key forward. It had weight. Most hotel keys now are feather-light plastic promises. This had the gravity of a thing that could break a window or a vow. When I turned toward the elevator, a couple passed behind me, talking in the hush that good hotels teach people. The woman's coat was the color of tea left too long on a stovetop. The man pushed a luggage cart that didn't squeal. They didn't have faces I could hold onto. I glanced at their tags for names, realized there were none, and then realized I couldn't remember their coats either, only that there had been two people, that they moved like an answer to a question I hadn't asked. My bell rang again, a single bright note, and then grew warm. Part Roman 2, the elevator without a 6. The elevator was old enough to be charming and new enough that I believed it wouldn't kill me. It had a mirror on 3 sides and a panel of buttons that glowed a dull apricot, like fruit bought out of season. 15712. No 6, of course. I pressed 7. The door closed with a sigh that sounded practiced. The mirror showed me 3 times, each with a slightly different mouth. My bell, hidden in my pocket, shivered so hard it buzzed my hip bone. Between floors, the elevator stopped. The mirror dimmed, then brightened. The panel blinked, and where 6 had been missing, a blank space glowed the color of a bruise. I didn't touch it. The car continued up. On 7, the door opened to a wakeful hallway. A carpet in a pattern of falling leaves. Walls with framed black and white photographs. Skiers in sweaters soft as fog. A wedding party with eyes bright and unblinking. A child looking toward the camera with a pinwheel in each hand. My room key turned like it had always been mine. 609 was halfway down. Inside, a bed with a mountain of pillows, a faint smell of lemon, rind, and heated dust, a window overlooking the dark shoulder of the hill. There was a tray on the desk, not for coffee, but a room service menu printed on thick cardstock. Under late night, after soup du jour, and club sandwich came a short list in a smaller font. A knock that belongs to you, $1. One conversation you dodged, $1. A familiar voice from the wrong decade, $1. A piece of furniture that remembers you, $1. Beside each, the price column held not numbers, but the same dash. The footnote read, "See attendant for settlement." I put the menu back where I'd found it. I told my recorder, small, black, with a bitten corner, that I was currently rolling my eyes, and then turned it off because something about the silence of the room made narration feel rude. The room phone, avocado green and shining like a polished leaf, rang once and stopped. I waited for it to ring again. It didn't. I set my bell on the desk. It rang. I didn't touch it. It rang again. When I put my palm over the bell to mute it, the brass was almost hot. My hand came away smelling faintly of pennies and rain. There was a knock on the door. 3 soft taps, then a 4th that landed the rhythm like a sentence period. Not housekeeping, not a drunk, a knock that felt like I remembered it from a different apartment, different city. A knock from a night when I was 22 and ordered noodles at 2 a.m. and told my then girlfriend I loved her for the first time and meant it, and it went bad, as some true things do later. House rules, I said aloud, because speaking rules makes them inch closer to obeyed. Do not accept items through doorways. Instead of opening, I looked through the peephole corridor distorted into a fishbowl. The carpet's leaves swam. On the threshold sat a silver cloche, one of those lids restaurants lift with a flourish, and beside it, on the floor, a note card handwritten in neat block letters, complimentary. I put the chain on. I opened the door a crack. Cold bled around the hinge. The cloche had steam beading on its underside, though the corridor air was not warm. When I closed the door again, my bell rang as if it approved of my caution, as if to say good. 10 minutes later, the cloche was still there. 20 minutes later, I opened the door and risked it. I slid my foot into the hall, nudged the tray inside, and shut the door. The chain rattled like an outraged necklace. Under the cloche, a key, not a room key. An elevator key, the long, odd kind I've seen in YouTube videos. The ones buildings used to switch cars to service mode. The handle was stamped M. H. The shaft shone with wear that comes from a century of doing only one job. My bell said nothing. The phone said nothing. The menu rustled on the desk, though nothing moved. Okay, I told the air. I know a plot hook when it bites, part Roman 3, the 6th floor that refused its name. There's a particular thrill in doing the wrong thing on purpose. It feels like stepping into a photograph you were only meant to look at. The elevator key slid into the lock beside the panel. The serve light went on. The car hummed, more intimate now, like a breath taken just for me. The missing 6 glowed. I pressed it. The car didn't move. The car moved in a way I don't know how to say. Not up, not down, a through that made my stomach pitch, as if I were a bottle on a wave. When the door opened, a hallway waited that didn't belong to the Marigold House. The carpet was not leaves. It was a black runner with a thin white stripe down the center, the kind used to keep footfalls quiet. The walls were dark wood panels. The light came not from sconces, but from picture frames that glowed like boxes holding a different day. Each frame displayed a room live feed, I thought at first, but the rooms looked wrong. The camera angle felt too low, like a child sitting on a suitcase. The colors were a touch off, as if seen through water. The first frame showed a room where a child slept with a stuffed rabbit under her chin. The second showed an empty hallway I recognized as my own. The third showed a ballroom that didn't exist in this building, high windows, a stage with a piano no one played. The fourth frame showed room 609. My bed, my coat on the chair, my recorder half under a pillow. I stood very still, as if motion might let the picture catch up and make me visible. In the frame, the cloche sat on my desk where the key had been. In the frame, the cloche lifted itself. Inside the cloche, on the picture of my desk, was not a key. It was a heart-shaped locket on a chain I knew without knowing why. Down the hall, someone laughed. The laugh wasn't mean. It was a professional laugh, the kind you hear from someone who understands overtime. I took a step. My bell rang one soft, embarrassed chirp, like it had cleared its throat. "Irene," said a voice, and it didn't echo because that would have made it cinematic. And this place had no time for that. We ask guests not to wander. I turned. The night manager looked the same except for his eyes, which reflected the hallway like a lens. You could have developed photographs from those eyes. He nodded at the picture frames. As if they were windows, he checked for drafts. First-time guests like to pull the service key, he said. We've made our peace with that. But there's nothing up here you need. I need to know why you had a key under a cloche, I said. It was complimentary, he said. We comp what we want experienced. Experienced, I repeated, irritated, because when I'm scared, I circle words like a dog testing a fence. We don't sell anything, he reminded me gently. We only hold. Hold what? I asked. He looked unsure, and the small uncertainty made him briefly human. What you bring to our doors to set down, he said. What you don't want to carry for one night. We hold, we reconcile, we return. That's the job. The rooms are for sleeping. The desk is for keeping. And the pictures, I asked, because once a person shows you their secret hallway, you might as well ask for the tour. He considered, and his consideration had the same smell the lobby had, a hint of heated dust and lemon rind. "You show us what matters," he said finally. "We keep an eye on it." The frame showing my room shifted. The angle changed. Now the view was from under the bed. My own feet crossed the room and sat on the edge of the mattress. The camera under the bed blinked not blinked, something breathed, and the picture fogged and cleared. "Okay," I said, all fake calm. Coming down, he inclined his head as if I'd done the polite thing. As I stepped into the elevator, my bell went warm again. I pressed L, and the car moved, that strange through motion that felt like falling inside a verb, part Roman for the menu after midnight. Back in my room, the cloche sat on the desk. Inside it, the locket from the picture, exactly as I knew it to be, older than my memory of it, engraved with 2 letters worn away by thumbs. I didn't own that locket. I knew exactly how it would open, with a nail under a dent on the side. I knew it would click twice and spring. I knew that inside would be a picture cut from a larger photograph, half a face, the corner of a mouth I'd kissed, a sliver of a window that led in winter. I didn't touch it. I called the desk. "Room service," the night manager said, as if everything we were doing were normal and would appear on an itemized receipt. "You put something in my room that isn't mine," I said. "We put something in your room that you set down a long time ago," he said. "It's waiting to be returned. I never left you anything." "Then perhaps," he said, apology smoothing his voice, "someone left it with you. People do that too. They hand you the heavy they can't carry. They expect you to balance the weight with jokes and episodes and walking at night." The phone's plastic was warm in my hand. "What is this place?" I asked. "A hotel," he said simply. "We don't decide how people use us. We only try to keep good books." A pause. Somewhere, air sighed under a door. "If you want food," he added, as if he'd overstepped and needed to drag the conversation back to facts, "the kitchen can do soup. After midnight, the other menu applies. It's printed on your desk." "I saw it," I said. "If you call the number at the bottom," he said, "be sure." The room's light deepened a shade, as if the bulb had found a warmer color in itself. The clock said 12:02. I didn't sleep. I lay on the bed with the locket on the desk and my bell beside it. At 3:03 a.m., the room's mirror, a rectangle near the door, rimmed in a gilt frame that had seen better dusters, darkened. House Rule 3 said do not look into mirrors after 3:03 a.m. I looked. My reflection stood where I stood, a fraction to the left. The mirror didn't show the room behind me. It showed a corridor with a stripe down the center, and frames that glowed with rooms. My reflection wore a bellhop's jacket, dark green with brass buttons that reflected everything except my face. When I moved, my reflection didn't. She lifted a hand and pinched her forefinger and thumb together, like she was picking an invisible thread up and breaking it. My bell rang. The locket popped open by itself. Inside, not a photo. A key tag, thin as a coin, engraved with room 1313. There is no 13 in hotels built after a certain year. You can scare people with the number, but it's mostly a con. The dangerous numbers are the ones you don't know are there. The phone rang from the corridor, not my room phone. The corridor phone, mounted to the wall by the ice machine that didn't exist, rang from behind my door. Slow, patient, a ring with time. I closed my eyes. I counted to 20. I broke rule number 1. I opened the door, stepped into the corridor, and lifted the receiver of the phone mounted there, pale yellow, coiled cord slack with many nights of not being used. A voice said my name like a word learned in the mouth, not on a page. Irene. I knew that voice. I hadn't heard it in years. I had typed to it in lowercase at 4 a.m. and used it to hold a ceiling up. I had watched it say I can't on a Monday, and had forgiven it on a Thursday, and had never, ever forgiven myself for the shape of the days in between. This isn't fair, I said into the phone. Nothing about hotels is fair, the voice said, and something clinked soft on porcelain, the sound of a spoon in a cup. They make rooms identical, and then they expect you not to remember the last person you were in them with. I can't talk to you, I said. You're not, the voice said. You're talking to yourself. We only carry what you brought. The line went dead. The hall went dim. My bell, back on my desk, rang twice, absurd and formal. The way clerks ring bells in old movies right before someone complains. Part V, the laundry chute, and the night ledger. By 4 o'clock, the storm had stomach aches. It heaved against the building and lay back. I couldn't sleep. The locket was open on the desk. The key tag 1313 stared with a confidence I didn't own. I needed proof, something that would make this more than a story my brain had invented from 1,000 midnight posts. I took the elevator down to 2, where the laundry lived. Every hotel laundry smells the same. A chemical wetness that salts your whole head. The Marigold House's laundry had old machines and newer carts. No people. A door-marked staff only was ajar. The room beyond was small, with a desk, a bulletin board, a radio that sat like an old cop at a diner, and a ledger, a real, green-lined, weighty ledger open, pen resting in its spine. The columns read, Name room held returned balanced. My bell rang once, as if asking permission. The last page showed today's date. The names above mine were unknown to me, and so familiar I felt them in my teeth names you see in emails from people you never meet. L. Ashcroft, 514. A Thursday in June / a dog's bark / her father's cologne returned. G. Seeley 1003. A left glove / one decision, unmade returned. The entries were written in different hands, some as precise as sheet music, some a rush that flattened vowels into rails. On the last line, E. Trans 609. The bell / a locket / a voice from the wrong decade / the choice not to answer returned. Underbalanced, someone had added in pencil, staff canned. Then, in the same hand, legacy. The word turned in my head like a gear that wanted teeth. Legacy, I said to the room. I don't have any relatives who. The bulletin board held photos, staff parties, a holiday potluck with paper plates, a summer cookout with grill smoke. In one picture, a young woman in a housekeeping uniform smiled straight at the camera. She had my mother's cheekbones and my mouth. The back of the photo was stamped the Marigold House, 1994. Under it, in pen, Lynn T. Night shift. I pressed a palm to my sternum like I could keep my heart from remembering something I hadn't given it permission to recall. Your mother worked here, the night manager said from the doorway. I didn't jump. I only closed the ledger so carefully it made no sound. You knew that, he added. You carried it in your pocket, and pockets are what we do. She never said, parents don't tell children about all the rooms they've slept in, he said, especially if the bed was too soft to forgive. What does legacy mean? I asked. He looked at the ledger, not at me. It means the desk knows your name, he said. It means the elevator recognizes your bell. It means we have a position open and a candidate we liked once, and we can like again. No, I said. No, thank you. I already have a job. I tell stories. So do we, said, and for the first time something tired showed in him, an oldness that wasn't age exactly, but accumulated evenings. We keep them. We stop them from evaporating in the dark. We return them in the morning so people can go on pretending time is tidy. Why me? I asked. Because you're good at not forgetting, he said. Because you picked up a bell someone else put down. Because you were going to leave the locket on the desk. And also you were going to open it, and you were going to forgive yourself for both choices. And we admire that kind of bookkeeping. I don't want your admiration, I said. It's not for sale, he said mildly. Neither are we. The radio on the desk crackled. A voice, genderless, said, Room 1313, requesting clearance. The voice had the dry clarity of of someone who hasn't slept in years and has made friends with it. The manager glanced at the radio, then at me. "You should go back upstairs," he said. "It's nearly checkout." "It's 5, I said. "Checkout is at 11. He tilted his head. "Not here." Part VI, first climax. The ballroom turns, and the bell eats the quiet. I didn't take the elevator. I took the stairs, which were concrete painted the green of a hospital that tried. The 6th floor landing had no door. My feet kept going up, but the stairwell kept staying the same, landing after landing like a loop recorded onto itself. I walked until my calves burned. When I pushed a metal bar at random, it opened into the ballroom I had seen in the picture frames. A ballroom shouldn't exist in this building. The ceiling was high enough to dream under. The windows were tall panes of winter. A piano sat on a small stage, lid open like a listening ear. Tables stood waiting, as if the party had migrated to someplace more expensive. I crossed the floor. As I did, something shifted. The chandelier overhead amber drops like petrified rain tilted, and the room tilted with it like a boat turning into a wave. The floor under my boot changed grain mid-step, from oak to ash to something like bone. And then the bell in my pocket rang itself out of my pocket and landed on the floor with a sound like a coin deciding a future. It rolled fast, faster, a wobbling orbit, and stopped at the foot of the stage. It rang again, louder, each strike landing closer to something I didn't want named. My reflection in the piano lid wore the bellhop's jacket. She looked like she knew how much a room could hold before it split its seams. She lifted a hand and made a circle in the air, a small, proprietary gesture, like a night auditor flipping to a fresh page. The door at the far end of the ballroom opened. A stream of guests entered, dozens, maybe more, dressed in clothing from no particular year, their faces lit by the thought that someone had finally called their table. They moved with the calm of people who have already made their bad decisions and were at last being told where to sit. The night manager walked last. He held the ledger. He didn't look triumphant. He looked relieved, which is worse. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, and his voice filled the room with its polite electricity. "Thank you for your patience. We'll begin our reconciliations." At the bar, a bartender in a vest poured drinks that weren't liquid into glasses that weren't glass. When the first guest approached the desk, the chandelier stopped swaying, and the floor settled, and the room held its breath the way a body does right before a sneeze. "Irene Tran," the manager said, eyes on the ledger. He didn't call me up. I was already standing there, bell at my toes, locket on its chain swinging with no source of wind. You've set down a bell that summons your courage when you don't trust your mouth, a locket with a picture of a life that didn't make it, a voice you wanted to stop hearing and also never stop. You asked us to keep them. You tried to leave them. We kept them clean. I never asked, I said, and heard the unkindness in my own voice, and hated that the room might make me sound like a child not ready to carry her bag. You came with them, he said. The door took them as you passed. That's what doors do. We simply wrote it down. And now what? I asked. You want me to sign? I want you to balance, he said. Take what you can carry. Pay the rest with time you don't want or time you can spare. We recommend small change, a minute of waiting room, a quarter hour of a line at the DMV. We don't take from the bright parts. We're not monsters. The guests behind me murmured with the relief of people hearing rules they could live inside. I could leave, I said weakly. You could, he said. The door is there. I looked at the door. Beyond it, the revolving door turned once by itself. I could see the road, the snow, the morning that was not yet fully a fact. If I walked, the story would end. I could tell it later, bent to fit what people believe. Or I could do the thing that would eat me. I'll balance, I said. The ballroom exhaled. Good, the manager said. And for a second his smile had no tricks in it at all. He opened the ledger to a blank line. It had my name at the top already. Payment, he said gently. I thought of bad time I wouldn't miss. Internet outages, lines at post offices, being on hold, and hearing the same 12 bars of synth bossa Nova on loop, waiting for test results that came back as we should discuss instead of all clear. You can have, I said. Every time I looked at my phone pretending I wasn't waiting for it to light up. Measured, he said, and the pen moved. And I said, every minute I spent rehearsing a conversation I never had. Measured, he said, and the pen moved again. And I said, and felt the floor notch under my boots, as if the building wanted to brace for a wave. Every time I stood in a doorway thinking if I didn't cross it, nothing would change. The room tilted, pleased. The pen stopped. There's one more, he said. I don't have anything left I want to give. It's not a give, he said. It's a keep. You keep it for us. What? The bell, he said simply. Stay at the desk. One night, it will be clean. It will be exact. It will be merciful. We need a good bookkeeper. Someone who knows stories and can write them straight. Behind him, in the piano's lacquer, my reflection in the bellhop jacket looked at me the way you look at yourself in a window on the train, tired, already in motion. One night, I said. One night, he promised. I half believed him. I half didn't. is the state in which most haunted things happen. Part Romans 7, second climax. The 13th key and the family debt. At 5:17 a.m., the ballroom drained of guests like a bathtub whose stopper had been found. Doors opened in careful places. The chandelier unlearned its sway. The bar flickered out a last light. The night manager showed me where the desk kept everything: keys, ledgers, a drawer of items guests were always certain they had lost in taxis and never in their own hands. He showed me the switchboard, which wasn't ornamental after all. It hummed when a call came not from a handset, but from the building. He showed me a list titled Incidentals to Return. The names were written in many inks, many hands. At the top, a cleaner, newer line glowed faintly by itself. Lynn T. Late shift due. My mother, I said. He nodded. She worked one night too many, he said. Storms will do that if someone doesn't relieve you. She never checked out, I said. She left before dawn, he said, which is not the same thing, and I heard it as the difference it was. But she never reconciled the one thing she gave us to keep. What was it? I asked. He rested his fingers on the ledger spine, almost affectionate. The choice, he said. The choice to put a child to bed in a different town and never come back here again, not even to say goodbye to a wall. You kept that. We held it, he corrected. Because she asked us to, because she couldn't carry it into the day and live. I swallowed. The air tasted like a copper penny between teeth. How do I return it? I asked. By staying for one night, he said. By ringing the bell at dawn, by checking her out. My bell was on the counter. It didn't ring. It sat with its mouth closed like a secret. At 5:29, a wind slid through the revolving door and had the decency to pretend it came from outside. The sky was thinning to a lighter black. The ledger had only one line left to be balanced. The manager stepped back from the desk as if making room. Go on, he said. I touched the bell. It was cold now, polite. I rang it once. The elevator down the hall dinged. It opened on a floor that had no number. 1313 glowed above it, steady as noon. A woman stepped out, 30 maybe, her hair pinned back with the stubbornness of someone told it would never stay, her uniform too big in the sleeves. She had my cheekbones. She had the mouth I had when I was too tired to be clever. She saw me and stopped like she had reached the edge of a map, looked at the desk, the ledger, the bell. Check out, she asked, almost apologetic. Yes, I said, and the word had a tremor in it I hoped sounded like relief and not fear. She smiled like a person in a photograph that develops slowly. She put her hand on the counter, right where mine was, and there was a shock, the kind of tiny electric bite that happens in winter when you touch anything that belongs to the world. Nay, question almost undid me. Lynn, she said. Lynn Tran. I wrote it in the book with a pen that had weight to it, as if gravity liked it. I ticked returned, and then underbalanced wrote, by daughter. The chandelier trembled once, not from wind. The door sighed, the sigh of a building allowed to stop holding a specific breath. The radio in the laundry room crackled and said, cleared. Thank you, she said softly. She looked younger now than the photograph in the laundry, or older, or exactly the age of the choice she had made and left on a shelf. I have questions, I said, because of course I did, because the body wants the more you can't carry. You can ask me all of them later, she said in a voice that carried the exact shape of mornings in a kitchen I hadn't had. Morning is coming. She touched the bell. It didn't ring. She stepped backward. The elevator doors closed on 1313. The number faded, as if the building had remembered its manners. The ledger's page turned itself. The next page had my name at the top, already written in a hand that wasn't mine, but made it look like I'd always planned to be here. One night, the manager said behind me, reminding me of the promise he'd made and would break or keep with equal calm. One night, I echoed, part Roman 8, final climax, the day clerk, the vacancy that isn't, and the bite. Dawn is always smaller than you expect in winter. It arrives like a cautious apology. At 6:01 a.m., the day clerk arrived young, with a scarf the color of rhubarb and a cheerful, rehearsed good morning. That didn't survive long past the revolving door. He stopped. He looked at me. His smile adjusted. You're new, he said, and glanced around as people do when they enter a room they think knows them and find it undecided. Covering a shift, I said. Storm, he asked, and unwound his scarf. Something like that, I said. He nodded like someone who has decided to carry only what is necessary. He put his bag under the desk. He checked the ledger with the speed of a person who has practiced looking only at the lines he has to. All balanced, he asked. All balanced, I said. Good night, he asked, because even day clerks say night here, as if the hours don't dare their names to mean anything. I thought of the ballroom tilting, the bell circling, the ledger anchoring itself like a ship in a bad storm. I thought of my mother stepping out of an elevator from a floor that was a number and an idea. I thought of the choice I had made to hold a thing I didn't understand and to call it work. Good, I said, because the truth is rarely a useful currency. He took the bell as if it were his. He set it on the counter exactly where I had kept it. He looked at me. You off at 6? He asked. I am, I said, and the words sat in my mouth like a borrowed bite. Go get breakfast, he said kindly. The diner on Pine does good eggs. Okay, I said. I stood. My legs ached in the precise way a night's work does. I took my coat. I took nothing else. I stepped to the revolving door. It turned once by itself, as if remembering someone who just passed. Snow fell like someone had sifted the sky for lumps. The street looked like a better story than anything I had told. I stepped out. I expected a rush relief, yawning, the sudden weightless stupidity of a night shift ending. What I felt was a bite right at my wrist, sharp and small. I looked down. The chain of the locket, which I had left on the desk, circled my wrist like it had always been there. The locket lay against my pulse, warm as a hand. I opened it. Inside was a photo I had never taken. The lobby of the Marigold House from the desk, morning light breaking across the counter. The bell in the exact place it lived. Behind the desk stood me in a jacket with brass buttons, looking neither tired nor rested, only that the blank, private face you wear when you are almost yourself and almost your job. Across the bottom, in the neat block letters from the note card, was written, "Returnable upon next stay." I shut the locket. I looked back through the glass. The day clerk was talking to someone I couldn't see. The night manager wasn't there. My bell in my pocket, how had it gotten there? Rang once, bright as a coin struck against a more expensive coin. The sound went forward into the day and backward into the night. I went to the diner on Pine and ate eggs that were better than a happy ending. I texted a friend and told her I was fine, which was both true and not. I drafted an episode outline called "Do Not Look into Mirrors After 3:03 a.m. and deleted it because the story needed better names than that. At noon, I walked back. The hotel looked like a shop window trying not to confess it had sold everything inside. The revolving door let me in. The day clerk nodded with the practiced warmth of a person who has met everyone before. The bell sat on the counter, quiet. "Back again?" he asked. "Just returning something," I said, and raised my wrist. "Keep it," he said. "You'll bring it next time." "I won't be staying again," I said, because it seemed like the kind of lie you ought to offer a place like this out of etiquette. He smiled, and his smile had the mercy of someone who knows exactly how good an egg can be after a long night. "We hear that a lot," he said, and handed me a blank guest card, the kind used for new rules. "Take a fresh one," he added, "just in case." On my way out, I looked at the mirror behind the bar. For breath that bit, I saw 1313 above the elevator in the reflection, though the real elevator had no display at all. For a breath, my reflection didn't move when I did. For a breath, the bell rang from somewhere I couldn't get to without the right key. I left. That night, in my apartment, my phone lit at 03 a.m. with a calendar reminder created by no app I own. Checkout one night. Location: the Marigold House. Notes: balance owed 000000. The counter started to count up, not down. I turned the phone face down. In the dark, I could feel the locket cooling on my wrist like a slice of moon, and the bell on my nightstand was a mouth that refused to sleep. I fell asleep anyway. When I woke, there was a small door in the wall of my bedroom that hadn't been there before, painted the same color as the plaster, polite as a warning. A keyhole waited. The elevator key from my coat was missing. Outside, the city was just being a city. Dogs took their people out. A garbage truck made its long mechanical sigh. Somewhere, a diner's bell rang for someone else. I pressed my ear to the new door. From the other side came a ring, quiet as a bruise, steady as inventory. It's been ringing since. I made coffee. I answered emails. I avoided mirrors after 3:03 a.m. I didn't order room service of any kind. I recorded an episode about houses that keep lists and never said the name Marigold once. When I breathe, sometimes the locket warms, as if something on the other end is checking the line. When I walk past a hotel in any city and the revolving door turns by itself, I feel a draft at my wrist, as if a small door behind my wall has opened a fraction to take attendance. I will not check in again, not on purpose, but one night when a storm stacks itself on the sky like a promise, and the lights dim in a way that makes the room look, briefly, like a photograph of itself, I will ring a bell without meaning to, and a number that doesn't exist will glow, and the ledger will open to a line with my name on it, written in a hand that is not mine and has always been. The price isn't money. The price is the keeping. Checkout is careful. The key won't stop ringing.